Hi everyone, it's me, Eartha, and I have a question for you. So how do you use your mindfulness practices when you are out and about? It's, whether you're walking or if you're driving. It's a good question, I think, because usually, it's easy to practice our mindfulness when we're in a nice, cool, air conditioning studio or office or in our home. But a lot of times our triggers, maybe, especially the major triggers, are not in our safe environments. It's when we get out of our environments. Which practice do you use? And so for this podcast, I want to welcome you to practice some mindfulness activities and allow you to do some self-reflections. I think it's important, one thing, is to keep hydrated when you're out and about with water. It's cold, and I can feel the coolness going all the way down into my stomach. That's a mindfulness practice. The water doesn't have a taste, but it's refreshing. Sometimes I like to look at everybody's tennis shoes to see the different styles. I don't know if that's a mindfulness practice, but this is something. Different colors, different styles. As I was producing this podcast for this week, my son and I had a reservation to go on a guided tour of this park, Phil Hardberger Park. And our guide, David Jimenez, is such a wonderful mindfulness, creative park guide. And I wanted to capture some of David's talks as we walked through the park. And so as a special treat for you, I invite you to come with us as our group walks through the park. And, when I walk through the park, I think I'm touching on the tip of an iceberg. But with David, our park guide, he's the education coordinator for Phil Hardberger Park here in San Antonio, I feel like he has opened up a whole new world of mindfulness. So I hope you enjoy this podcast, and I hope you enjoy the different clips of our park guide, David Jimenez, here at San Antonio.
This one called Waterloo. Here's a map of the park. We're on the east or Blanco side of the park, so Waterloo is kind of like a smooshed jelly bean. Actually, I'm gonna start calling it a caterpillar shape because I like caterpillars. It's long and wiggly. If you ever get lost or come to the park, on this side, this path is straight to the building, and then once you get to Waterloo, pretty much either way you go, you'll make it back if you stay on Waterloo. And the Landbridge is on the opposite side of where we're at. But I switched about halfway to art for my degrees in producing art. And then after college, I taught art for a while at the high school level. So I was probably get to plants and things. So they look really sad because they get full sun during most of the day. But all of these tall plants are called velvet leaf mallow. I encourage you to come feel the leaves of these tall plants. Because the leaves are really nice, really enjoyable. There's also one right there that the leaves are a little less sad looking. we have a whole bunch of native plants here at the park, right? That's what we're trying to support. And throughout the year, staff will reseed or remove invasives. But it's important to learn about plants because while this lovely to feel plant that makes beautiful coral colored flowers is here, in the same area is a not safe plant down here, and it also looks really sad right now because it gets full sun. This is silverleaf nightshade. Nightshade is a big family of plants. Some of them are edible, like tomatoes and potatoes and eggplants. But a lot of the wild ones are toxic because they haven't been cultivated to eat. The silverleaf nightshade is one of our native varieties, and it makes little fruit that look like little yellow tomatoes. But even the animals know, don't eat it because it causes gastrointestinal distress. It's not that you can't touch it, but if you forget to wash your hands and you touch your eye or your nose or put your hands in your mouth, you can get very sick. But they are an important part of this ecosystem. They make beautiful flowers for pollinators. They're a host plant for certain types of caterpillars. So people complain, if you have a vegetable garden, which I do, people complain about the tomato hornworms or the tobacco hornworms eating their tomato plants. But this is what those caterpillars should be eating naturally.
Sorry, guys. Sorry.
You're okay. So it's not that the caterpillars are necessarily targeting your garden, is that the caterpillars exist already in this area of Bear County. Well, they're all over the country, really. They eat the native nightshades, and your tomato is the non-native, and so that's really the out-of-place thing that you have to use herbicide or insecticide to try to manage. I just like to point it out, it's really hard to get a good look of what it normally looks like because we're starting to get to the hot part of summer, but most of the year they have lush leaves and little purple flowers. In another month it'll just be twigs with some yellow berries.
And what's the name again?
This one is silverleaf nightshade. I call this the apartment tree. It's got a whole bunch of different cavities and interesting bumps, and there's a whole chunk that's like missing. So this is another live oak tree. The biggest trees in the area here are live oaks. In other parts of town we've got the cypress and other big trees. Now oak trees can live for hundreds of years. This one probably over 100. And at some point, maybe it was struck by lightning, or maybe there was a wildfire, or maybe a storm ripped off a branch and a big chunk came off with it. Trees don't heal the way people heal. We bleed and then we get scabs and then our skin heals that way. Trees, when they heal, they kind of grow around and seal up the wounds by growing around it, which is why they're kind of curved when you cut off a branch and give it time to grow.
Oh, yeah.
But with that piece missing, it shows us the heartwood, which is that internal wood of the tree, and that's what supports the tree and makes it so strong. And that's the part that the furniture is made out of. This one is notable because of all the cavities too. So many different wildlife are supported by oak trees. Not keystone species. What's the other word? They're like foundational for the ecosystem here. Then maybe it is keystone species. Indicators are the ones to keep an eye on, and if they go down, that's bad. But keystone species are the ones that support a huge number of wildlife, like hundreds of insects and pollinators and larvae, hundreds of birds, all kinds of mammals and reptiles can make their home in or under or up in the branches of this tree. Maybe not all at the same time, but definitely throughout the year, raccoons and owls and bats and ringtail cats have called this tree home because of the great places to hide. Worms under the soil, daddy longlegs, you name it. So I just like to point out this tree because, again, it's another neat example of sort of the resources provided by a single tree. And having hundreds and thousands of trees is a huge asset for the wildlife in the middle of one of the biggest cities in the country. And you'll also note we have a trail camera. I'm glad we have one out here. So the trail cameras started as a project just on the land bridge for the first 2 years of its existence. And then once that project is done, I'll hang it in the tree. I'm so sorry. I'd like you to try to get a close look at this little tiny blob in the tree.
Christmas?
So it's a cocoon.
Yeah.
Over here we have a cocoon of a bagworm moth. Bugs are my favorite thing to talk about. So caterpillars, right, can turn into butterflies or moths, and their middle stage is called a pupa. And if it's a moth, a lot of times the pupa is in a cocoon, a house that they build themselves. And if it's a butterfly, the chrysalis usually just hangs freely underneath a branch or a leaf or leaves of your house, or my picnic table at my house. What's cool about bagworms is that they build this neat little structure as they grow. So when they're hatching and they're tiny, their cocoon is tiny. But as they grow, they eat leaves, break off twigs, and glue them to their house, and they carry it with them as they travel from tree to tree. So when they get big enough, like 2 inches, they close the door of their house, they go through metamorphosis, and later in the year or the following year, they'll come out as a really pretty moth. And this one specifically is Abbott's bagworm moth. But we have different kinds of bagworms. Some of them are just stay itty bitty, but this is a big one. And I just think their houses are so cool. And it's another great opportunity to sort of look at the difference in biomes that's just here in the park. So Bear County is a good sized county. And it's got 3 ecoregions just in our county, and there's sort of a 4th that's really close. So we have, I might need your help, Nancy. We have Post Oak Savanna, which is what was kind of this area. We have Blackland Prairie, which is, I think, on the south part of Bear County. And then we have Edwards Plateau, which is northwest, moving
Right towards Dominion.
that way. Yeah. And then I always forget the one that's sort of near.
I just looked at that map the other day, too.
Well, if we remember, I can look it up in a minute.
Did you say you said to that?
Post Oak Savanna. So most of each ecoregion has its own sort of like climate window and rainfall window, sunlight window, temperature window, and therefore specific plants that thrive there, and then based on that, which wildlife you'll see in those areas. And of course there's overlap, like raccoons are everywhere, but we're really lucky because with that biome diversity, we have huge bird diversity. Birds will migrate through areas, but a lot of times they're super specific when it comes to nesting and feeding their young and what insects they're looking for and stuff. Here at Hardberger, we have a group of volunteers with the Bear Audubon Society, and they'll come out once a month, every month, even in the coldest and the hottest months. And for a few hours, they'll walk through the park and just record what birds they see and hear. And so based on the work they've done for almost a decade now, we know that there's 100, I kept saying 175, but I think it's 180 now, different birds that you could potentially see here just at Hardberger Park, never mind the rest of the city. Last year, there was a big brown bird that they said, that looks bigger than a hawk, but we don't really have eagles here. So they took a picture of it, and they zoomed in, and it looked like an eagle, but they couldn't tell what kind of eagle. And then they said, what's that speck in the background? So they zoomed in more, thank you technology, and they saw a bald eagle. So it was a juvenile bald eagle with an adult flying over the park. So they didn't land here, they don't live here, they were maybe just migrating through, but it's not impossible to see a bald eagle from the park.
Amazing.
We see
Maybe like a
caracaras
unicorn.
quite often.
Yeah, but and thanks to climate change, ranges of birds are changing. So we didn't used to have caracaras 20 years ago, but they're starting to be more common. Green jays are down now by Medina River, and they were down in Mexico before it was the upper limit of their range. Good morning. But it is beautiful and it is native, but don't touch it.
I'm not sure, but I think the natural thing is like similar to like digitalis, which
Okay.
is a heart medication that regulates. I have had one growing in my yard for years and years.
Yeah.
It blooms at night.
And they're so
And
beautiful.
so it, so when I open up the curtains, there it is blooming, and then as the sun comes up, it closes.
Wow.
But I don't do that.
Angel trumpet. It's another native plant, but it is also highly toxic. I've read differing things, so I'm not sure what's accurate, if it's just from touching that you can feel the effects, or if you actually do have to consume it. But this is a plant that's like, first you see things and then you expire. And like historically, indigenous people thank you. So good morning. So the Landbridge, again, was a big project. It was only completed and opened 5 years ago, but it had been in the works since the park was first purchased by the city. This was a part of the plan. It just took a decade to get funding and everything worked out logistically. Now it's shaped like a Pringles chip, so it's curved this way and then it's also curved the other way to sort of capture some of the water. So if there's a big heavy rainfall, a lot of the water gets funneled down in that direction, and we have a huge reservoir that then they'll use during extended drought to supplement the top of the bridge, and then water goes down, so it should get most of the other plants. But because everything here should be native, it should be able to endure whatever weather it gets from Texas. Now, most of these plants are native and chosen to be here because they're food or their nesting material or their shelter for different native animals, or they feed the food of the other animals. So like if a rabbit eats this plant, the coyote will come get the rabbit. There's also 2 water features on the bridge, one on this side, one on that side, and they're just little piles of rocks with a basin at the bottom that fills with water for the wildlife to come get. We live in a pretty dry area. There's not an active river. We've got Salado Creek, but it's a dry creek unless there's actively raining. So the water features are super important for the wildlife, and if you want to support wildlife at home, water features are the first and easiest way, and then after that is native plants. If you were to keep going that way, you would go to the larger half of the park. It's over 200 acres on the Northwest Military side. And our main building, the Urban Ecology Center, is over there, and so throughout the year we'll have programs there to teach people about nature. And then we're going to go that way in just a moment. There used to be another trail camera sort of on this area, but I think it was moved to another location. Thanks to the data from the first 2 years and then the continuing data we're getting, we know that all the large animals in the park have successfully used the Landbridge. All the large species. I don't know about all the individuals. So like we know the white-tailed deer come back and forth all the time. The coyotes come back and forth. The bobcats, the foxes, raccoons, armadillos, ringtails, opossum, skunks, and then rodents that we're not sure what they are because there's like 5 different native little rodents. Also, thanks to the data from the trail cameras, we know that there's 2 separate packs of coyotes. We know that the bobcat that's primarily residing here is a female, and she's had cubs over the last few years. But I also want to point out this bush that's flowering. And if you can, I'd like you to sort of pull a little flowering branch close to you to try to smell it. This is whitebrush, and it smells so lovely. To me, it's kind of like chalky candy smell, like those Smarties or something like that, or a candle, somewhere in that range.
What's a blue flower?
Oh, that's rock rose. Also learned about invasive species of the wildlife variety. So we have white-tailed deer in the park; those are native. But we have spotted an axis deer, and we're not too concerned because it's an individual. Axis deer are a species from South Asia, and they're beautiful. They keep their spots as they grow. And they were brought to the United States, Texas, for hunting ranches, but because of some storms in the past or whatever reason, there's now feral populations throughout central Texas. And we just have one, and she's really beautiful. I haven't seen her in person, but I know some of our other park staff have, and we've caught her on the trail camera a few times, so I hope she's happy here in the park. Yeah. It's got a skinny abdomen, so maybe it's a male.
Yeah.
Oh.
But don't sting me if you're...
Yeah, but good eye. I didn't even see it.
Yeah, a lot of insects don't have long lifespans. This is a actually, it's not a bee. This is a a robber fly. So these flies predate on bees. So they look like bees, they'll go up to flowers, and then they'll catch a bee. Yeah, they're bee mimics. And so it's got the yellow to also look like it's actually a fly.
Wow.
Right there, that other color is Johnson grass. That's very bad. So our volunteers and our staff know, and usually they'll flag an area to come back and work. I don't remember the name of this one. It might be blue stem. It's bad looking, but the leaves are just so nice.
For some reason, I thought they look like Turk's cap.
Yeah, they're cousins. Yeah, they're both in the mallow family. Whereas Turk's cap, the red flowers kind of stay tightened and erect. The mallow flowers will open more like the rock rose, the other cousin. And so they're like little coral-colored hibiscus-shaped flowers. So my bread was a little crunchy, but it was really good. And because the fruit is so dark, my bread was like black, and it gave me the mental image of chocolate. So in my head it tasted like chocolate, but I don't think it actually tasted like chocolate. It just had its own really nice plant flavor. And they're sweet if you try them. But this is a tree worth having at home because they don't have like a huge footprint on the ground, and they grow, make nice shade. You don't have to water it once it gets established, and maybe you'll get fruit. But I like them. And if you find one where the bark is like peeling off, it's really satisfying to just kind of crunch it up. It's like a little natural fidget. Yeah, natural fidget is persimmon bark. I love these trees.
Do you have to buy two? Because it's male and female. Do you have to buy two?
Well, and you may not know until they're mature enough to even make flowers what you've got. But as you can see, they're everywhere because all the animals eat the fruit and poop out the seeds everywhere. Even the foxes and coyotes eat this fruit. So during late summer and fall, you'll find it in the seeds in their scat also. Because it's just really nutritious and really yummy. Kind of right in the center, there's one nestled in the shade. If you stand right,
I just have to hold while I look up.
okay, kind of turning his head. And that noise sounds more like a juvenile, and they've been nesting in the park for the last couple of years. So there's one in the center there turning his head, and then there's one up and to the left in another branch. They look like hawks, but they're actually falcons. They're great at flying, but they like stuff that's already dead. And one of our regular birders got a really neat photo of a black vulture and a caracara sitting next to each other, and the black vulture was cleaning the caracara, hurting it. Moss is a whole different group of simple plants, and we do have moss that grows in the park on trees. Now, ball moss is actually in the bromeliad family. It's Tillandsia recurvata, and its cousin is the Spanish moss that's similar but grows hanging instead of in a cluster. What's nice about this one is that it is native. It's not bad. A lot of people will pay a lot of money to have them removed from their trees, but they'll just grow back. They like lower branches. They like branches without too many leaves. So they get a good airflow, but they don't like being on the topmost branches because they like a little bit of shade. They are edible for people. They have supposedly a little bit of like a citrusy flavor. I tried one, it didn't taste like anything to me. But they are nice because they're air plants, so they don't need a lot of stuff. They'll just get whatever rain they get every now and then airflow, and that's it. You can buy other air plants at like Lowe's or Home Depot, and then kill it in your house because air plants need a lot of airflow and rain to survive. This one, I'm gonna pour a little bit of water on it just because it's neat to watch how they turn green. So these plants, whenever it rains, they soak up the water like a sponge, and they immediately turn green, and they'll start doing their processes, their photosynthesis, because they don't know when the next rain is going to be. So they'll be super active as soon as it rains, and they'll turn bright green, and then once it starts to get dry, they'll like close all of their water parts, and they'll kind of go dormant and turn gray again until the next rain.
Oh, yeah.
They're not bad. They do provide
Wow, that's so interesting.
functions in nature, like their nesting
pretty cool.
material. Birds will pull them apart to build their nest. They sort of mimic nests in trees. So if I'm a snake, I'm not going to look in a tree full of ball moss for a bird's nest because that's just too much to look for. Insects will also make their home in these ball moss. You can toss it, Nancy. And hummingbirds, you don't usually think about as being insectivores. They do feed on nectar primarily, but especially when they're raising young, they'll need insects, and so sometimes they'll hunt for insects in the ball moss. So I just think they're little neat hubs of life up in the trees. Future programs, the fourth Saturday of July, I believe, is our ethnobotany nature talk and walk. And that one starts at the main building on the other side. It's even slower paced, and I don't think they go as far because they talk in depth about the different nature plants.
Oh, pollinator garden. Please do not pick, enter, or touch. This is the butterfly and bee territory. There's a monarch. This is their habitat. This is their little park. You know, they have a place to come and pollinate the plants.
Yeah, if y'all ever have any questions, don't hesitate to send me an email. My email's on the window there, and most of the kiosks have a calendar in them, and my email is there as well. Otherwise, I hope y'all have a good rest of your week.
Wow. Thank you, David, so much for your time and your expertise. And I just loved how you brought in imagery and texture and smells. And also to really remind us that the park is for the native animals and plants, and we are their guests. And so when we go into the park with all the information that you shared, we can respect the home of all the creatures and plants. Thank you so much for allowing me to film you for this Transition Awareness Breathing podcast. I hope my viewers had a great time, and I hope you felt like you were with us as we walked through the park. I look forward to talking to you again next time, and have a great day.